Alright, hey everyone, it is now time to discuss the rest of the characters. And unlike the leaders, it's going to be more traditional like I did the last video for Burst Renewal. I'm going to go through each character, and I looked at the ranks before because I tried recording this video before I finished the Crimson route thinking I could do it. I'm glad that I decided to not continue doing that because the ending of the Crimson route and the ending of the game changed some stuff for me. But nevertheless, we're going to go through the list. I'll give my thoughts on how I thought each play should be as a kind of overall character thoughts. So with that being said, I don't know the second, but I think I know the third. So well, we already know number one from the first video, it's Yumi. And I may speak a bit more about the leaders in this video once we have all the characters, but let's go on to number two. Oh, no, number two. Okay. So number two was Morocco. And taking the amount of votes too, Yumi has over 3,000 where Morocco has not even half that. That helps me lean into the idea that people mainly played one of the three routes, didn't necessarily go through the others. Now Morocco, I've got some interesting feelings on. Because while I will fully admit, as soon as I laid eyes on Morocco, she went in my rankings very quickly. Yes, all right, I'll admit that. There's no secret. All right, you've seen the playthrough. You know the effect it's had on me. And I actually do wonder if that was part of Morocco's ranking. Other characters transform, but even characters like Haruka don't. There's a certain interesting thing about how Morocco transforms. I'm actually wondering if that's going to be a thing in Estival. I'm not sure if it'll even be able to function the same, but Morocco, I feel, is one of the characters that really utilize the way the characters transformed in this game. If this was your first encounter with the characters, I imagine Morocco left quite a first impression. But as far as Morocco's character herself, Morocco was very petty for many reasons, and I actually felt she was done the best in her own route. And the others, they did not look on her favorably, especially in the Crimson route where she's gonna attack her own people and Yomi, her BFF, had to stop her. That wasn't the best look. So Morocco's ranking, as well as considering Yumi's, makes me think more so that people played one route more heavily than the others. Again, it's speculation on the things that I'm seeing, but I have a feeling that if people played all four of the routes, Morocco wouldn't be as high. And this is coming from someone who, yes, admittedly, like Morocco, I am not sure on how I would rank her. It's a difficult thing because, like I said, there were things I really liked, like the fact that Morocco was also an author as well, relationship with Shiki, also the whole mask on, mask off thing, timidness and fierceness. There are a lot of things going on, but I think I'll withhold judgment on Morocco till Estival. Is that cheap? Yes, it is, but hey, all right, that is my decision. There were mixed signals because Shinobi Versus showed characters in two different lights often. So I'm not sure which one to go off on. So that is my story and I'm sticking to it. Let's go on to number three, and it's Ikarga at 1,180. Now this isn't too surprising. Once again, I have to point out, Ikarga is the favorite member of Team Hanzo. If there's one thing I think that they could have done, Ikarga, I said it I think last video, but I do think she would have been a good, interesting main character. She was already one of the strongest members of the team. She was already in the role to lead the team. No one else has a class president as, like, I guess the honorary team leader, but the real team leader is someone else. Furthermore, Ikarga has a signature look and a signature weapon. One that can really stand out if you're looking at a bunch of different characters. But also, let's talk about the first strong scene, what made me feel like, all right, I'm invested in this game, was Ikarga's moment with her brother. That made me think that this game had something special in it, and we also had moments like when Ikarga had the mask on and was performing for the people in the slums. Also, Ikarga has some pretty intense rivalries. Like, the rivalries that Oscar have seem more circumstance, but Ikarga's are always about her. Something that, that she was rich, or, Murasaki in this case specifically targeted Ikarga because she blamed Ikarga for her situation. No one in the new Team Hebijo really, but still a decent amount of rivals. I also think for Team Hanzo, Ikarga's place hadn't changed for me. Still number one for me, definitely in Team Hanzo. So, and I think it's also interesting to point out that Murasaki and Ikarga were, if you played the Hanzo route, they were the first two characters of two teams to meet. So, and fight. That was a very strong impression for a fight if you were someone who played the original game and went to this one. Yeah, that fight, it really stuck with me. So, either way, let's move on to number 4. It is Ryobi. We have our first new Team Hebijo member. This makes sense to me. Why? Oh, I always thought in the new Team Hebijo route, the twins subplot was actually the most interesting thing about it, because again, I wasn't really rooting for new Team Hebijo to succeed in their goal, but seeing the twins take out their revenge on at least the person they thought it was, which, now I think about it, that's another thing that kind of hurt Miyabi. You assume for most of the story that she is the one responsible for taking out their sister. But nevertheless, it's not only their subplot. Ryobi is unique for many different reasons. There's a size different. I think Ryobi appeals to people who like both sides of the spectrum. You know what I mean when I say that. And also, I think, unlike Ryona, who I think suffered for being the mainly fan service character, though I got some questions about Ryona, and we'll get to that later. But I think Ryobi could benefit from being a quote-unquote fan service character while not being a fan service character. I'll explain that later when we get to Ryona, but Ryobi being the top member of that team, I can most certainly see that. So who is number 5? Yomi. Actually, that is surprising. Though if we include Murasaki in her story, perhaps not so much. I noticed it kind of in the first poll or burst renewal. Well, it's not burst renewal, burst. But it seems like the rivals help. Now I think about, it's not just Yomi's rivals are both Ikarga and Murasaki, and also two close friends. So it makes sense if their story was a big part of why people like their characters, they'd all be roped in. Because I'm thinking if we were to go with the idea that many people, or not as many people, got to the Crimson route, then what you might see on Yomi is mainly in the other 3 routes. And from what I can think of, Yomi does probably have the most unique presence in the other 3 routes due to her 2 rivals, at least in her team. I'd argue Hikake did as well. Not to mention Yomi was also a popular character in the previous game as well. So, well, relatively speaking. So, I can see it. What about number 6? Oh, and speaking of, number 6 is Hikage. Yeah, I think the same thing that made Hikage great in the previous game was still here in this game. We still had some character development that was going on. We got to see a glimpse of Hikake starting to go on the emotional path, and in this one, it's even more so. But again, if they're being hampered by a lot of people not playing the route, then what you see of Hikage is great. But it's just not... Well, honestly, no. The stuff with Imu and Hikage was hilarious. Maybe this is part of my personal bias in here. I will acknowledge that. All right, I'll always acknowledge when I'm being biased, perhaps. I would have put Hikage over Yomi, but I can see why this was a possible choice, all right? Though compared to... I do think there is quite a gap compared to 5th place and 6th place, but still, Hikage 6th place, that's not bad. Now, who is number 7? Number 7 is Yagyu. I can also see this, especially if we're looking at Team Hanzo as a whole. Seeing Yagyu sing with her sister and the story behind her eye patch, especially if you consider that if this is people's first experience with Yagyu, it's very strong. Though, it is curious. I would have thought that people would have been more upset with how Yagyu is being portrayed with the over-obsession with Hibari, but I guess not. I personally liked the level it was at in Burst Renewal. Didn't think it had to go as hard as it did in Shinobi Versus, but seeing how the polls are, they probably won't get rid of that anytime soon. In fact, that might be a more and more defining character trait. Yeah, actually, now thinking about it, it's not just the Team Hanzo. Yagi beat some other characters that I thought she wouldn't have. That's interesting. Okay. Well then, who is number 8? Murasaki. If we look at the new Team Heavy Joe, definitely can see Murasaki being second place. I quite cared for Murasaki, and I hated seeing that she was going on a darker path, but pretty much any other route had zero issues with and only wanted to protect. Especially when we got to the end of the Crimson route, and we got to see Murasaki meet up with Mirai. That was a very nice moment. Murasaki's the one who I would really like to have seen Murasaki in a different team. Well, not a different team, a good Shinobi team, because I feel like the evil Shinobi path isn't really for her. But you know, that's what her family is, so. But nevertheless, I thought Murasaki was a nice addition, and look forward to seeing more. Now, number 9 is Yzakra. And I gotta also look at the amount of votes that was given as well, because there's a pretty significant difference between Yagi and Murasaki and then Yzakra. Thought Yzakra would have been a bit higher than some of the others. I personally like the story about how Yzakra had a huge family, was trying to do this not just for her parents, but also for her siblings to get them all back together. I also thought Yzakra was right, though, thinking about it, with the whole approach of Shinobi, because Shinobi don't have, well, at least from my understanding, they don't have the freedom to think outside the box and do whatever they want to. Shinobi are supposed to follow their orders. Not following orders is how you end up being a renegade. And in the situation with Katsuragi's parents, if you're gonna join the system that did that to them, you need at least a plan to be able to avoid that. And when they were talking about killing versus not killing, I don't think they'll have that option as a Shinobi. So what I'm mentioning all that to say, maybe Yzakra could have been a bit more divisive for other people. Though 9th isn't bad, but for me, I just thought she would be a little bit up higher. It also could be gameplay wise, because Yzakra wasn't as, what is it, fluid, what I'm looking for? She's a bit more stiff compared to some other characters, but as far as the team rank, I can certainly see that I probably would have put her over Murakumo, because again, there was that, if Murakumo didn't have the other stuff where, you know, again, tagging her whole family and stuff like that, I might have put Murakumo over Yzakra, but for me, I had to put Yzakra over Murakumo for the team. So let's move on to number 10, Mirai. I honestly thought Mirai would be up higher compared to how she was in the first game. Though, once again, if character development was a big thing, Mirai had a lot of that in the first game. Also, a lot of heartwarming moments between herself and the other characters. And it might be, have to bring up the thought that Mirai was one of the only characters who fit a certain type. So, and with Ryobi in here, it might have, she's no longer unique. I'll say that, I guess. Yeah, that's as much as I'm gonna say on it. So maybe that's part of it. There were some very good moments with her and Shiki though, and especially when we got, again, to the actual Crimson route. But without the Crimson route, it's not as much to go off on. Though Mirai under Yomi for at least this route, if we're talking about this game in particular, I can see that. Hikage is the one I differ, but nevertheless. We're gonna move on. Now we already know who number 11 and number 12 are. That's Homura and Oscar. But to speak on their respective locations in their teams, I do think for Homura that Hikage, Yomi, and Mirai had a lot more going on for them in this game. Really, I felt like for both Homura and Oscar, they didn't really feel like main prominent characters until the end literally focused on just the two of them. But outside of that, there was a lot of interesting things that are happening in their own teams that seem to kind of compete with them. Though I'm just now realizing Homura is literally the 4th out of the 5th of her own team. That is interesting. While Oscar is the third, though it might be a slightly different case for Oscar, but we'll get to that. It was number 13, Haruka. Well, at the very least, I think that all of the Crimson Squad, they at least rank the highest as far as Haruka is the last member of the Crimson Squad. In fact, Haruka's quite close to Homura and Oscar, relatively speaking. I think Haruka suffers. For some reason, I think it's just a thing because I noticed in the last poll, the fan service characters, they get ranked low. I'm not sure why that is. Again, I'm going to mention something later when it comes to one of the characters, but there definitely seems to be something there. But as far as Haruka herself, there wasn't really much I felt going on with Haruka. In fact, the one instance that they had, it seemed more so like they had to give Haruka an issue, and that's what came up. Didn't seem as natural as a lot of the other stuff that happened, so I can see 13 making sense. I still enjoy Haruka though, but then again, I enjoy all that team, so sue me, alright? Sue me. 14th is Minori. And quite a difference here, 500. Honestly, Minori's an interesting one. I get that they were going for a certain demographic, but Minori's mental status seemed like, 5 or 6? That was quite the imbalance. Even more so, I guess it kind of played into Gessen's mentality about how all evil shinobi are actually evil. So it was an interesting perspective, but I can certainly see how a lot of people weren't keen on that, or wouldn't be as keen. It's different from Murasaki, who has the protect kind of feeling. And same with Mirai. Minori is quite different. I think for me, after I got a chance to see all of Team Gessen, it was definitely 5th for me. But 14th, I can see that. Though it makes me wonder about the positions of everybody underneath her though. Especially since, again, fan service characters tend to be liked as much. So I'm wondering if Haruka signals characters people had an issue with. Well, let's see, who is number 5? Oh, right, 15th is Miyabi. And like I said, I think Miyabi had a lot of things that could have gone right. But pretty much at every turn, Miyabi was looked at as the bad guy. Even in her own route for what she was doing, she ended up actually taking out other characters, where even though Yumi really wanted to do that, Yumi was stopped at every turn. So it's kind of an unfair thing. But in order to succeed in her goal, I guess she had to take out the Crimson Squad. So it would have been interesting to see if that didn't happen, how far Miyabi would rank. But it makes sense to me, at least for the reasons of other people on why she would end up in this rank. As far as what I think though, Miyabi's got a very interesting team. Shoot, how would I? Oh, actually, I don't know. I like a lot of Miyabi's teams for different reasons. I don't want to rank this team, but I can at least the ranking makes sense to me. I'll wait for Miyabi and Nestable. All right, that is my story. Again, sticking to it. Let's move on to 16. Ryona. All right. Look, this is one of those times where I'm saying again, fan service characters don't tend to be very popular in these polls, but yet I've seen a lot of people excited for me to meet Ryona. I've seen the views on me meeting that particular character, and there is a game in the future where they have chosen 5 characters to be, it's like I think, not just think, I'm actually quite hoping, yes I said it, that is a type of simulation game, and they chose 5 characters. From this list, Yomi and the previous list makes sense to add in that game. Murasaki maybe wouldn't have been the first choice, but definitely not an unfavorable choice. Oscar is the leader. Yumi is like, if you don't add her, you are absolutely dumb. You're losing money. But then they added Ryona. The Japanese developers did this based on, I would assume, the Japanese audience. It makes me wonder if they have access to something I don't. Because I'm saying all this to say I don't think Ryona was an unfavorable presence in this game. I can't call cap, But it makes me wonder, do people not like saying that Ryona is their favorite character or something? Because going based off this list, you would assume that Ryona's just hated. And again, like I said, the fan service characters take a blow. But there's something interesting happening here. Maybe Estable changed how people look at Ryona. Though considering that I met her in Birth Renewal and she pretty much acted the same, I don't think that's the case. I don't think anything happened. I don't think there was a change. And not to mention, Ryona was also attached to Ryobi in the same type of plot. I actually saw some interesting character moments from Ryona. It's interesting. 16th, I don't think, if I didn't already expect fanservice characters to not do well, I wouldn't have said Ryona would be 16th. But with the fanservice characters being the only reason that things make sense for certain characters, because Ryona also doesn't harm other people, it's interesting. But 16th for Ryona. Not what I would have said, but based on previous trends, it makes sense. Now, 17th is Hibari. Oh, and 16th ends the end of the new Team Heavy show. So, Hibari's placement. I mean, I don't remember Hibari doing anything annoying like the previous game. Well, I didn't think it was annoying. I thought it was interesting character moments. But I could see how other people would see it's annoying. But in this game, I think it might have something similar to do with Minori. Both Minori and Hibari are kind of in the same character. Their mental mindsets are quite low. And again, they're different from, like, Mirai and Murasaki have an intelligence to them. They're not dumb, especially Mirai's sake. But maybe that's what's going on here. That people just don't like that, or aren't as favorable for those type of characters. Like, for example, Ram and Ram in the Neptunia series, they're the genuine articles. They are how they act. Hibari and Minori, though, they're a lot older than that. So perhaps that's the reason why. I actually thought Hibari had some good character moments in this game. It was interesting hearing about her backstory, but I can't really dispute her place on this list. So with that being said, who's number 18? Katsuragi. Well, definitely Katsuragi is a fan service type character. Not to mention, Katsuragi is the type who, unlike even Haruka, now that I think about it, Katsuragi does unsolicited fan service actions, similar to Hanzo. Add that to the fact that, if you think about it, she actually is the reason her parents got found out in the first place. And this is just me indulging. Maybe people agreed with me when it came to Yzakra's point of view versus her point of view. I can't really dispute Katsuragi's place on this list. Not saying that I would put Katsuragi on this place in this list, but considering actions that she does, again, can't really contest it. So, I think this is the end of the Hanzo. Oh wait, no! I forgot. Ryona isn't the end of the new Team Heavy Joe. We're missing someone. But Katsuragi is the end of the Hanzo team. We've got two more. I'm assuming Shiki is number 19th and Emu is number 20. Shiki I can understand because, one, if Yagyu is up so high due to the story of her sister, then Shiki would have the opposite effect. Going after Yagyu's eye patch seems so unlike Shiki. It's one of those Morocco moments where I'm like, okay, it seems like we're dealing with two different characters. Shiki seems really kind, and for her to just all of a sudden have an obsession over that eye patch, I feel like it was the establishing moment for their rivalry that didn't really fit as well. But anybody who knows Yagyu's story, that can make you not like Shiki, because that means something very precious to Yagyu that no one should ever try to steal. So that can be one option. Another can be the way Shiki talks. Originally, it got on my nerves until I actually got to know Shiki and got to know what she's like in her own route, and then things make more sense. But I can certainly see there were a lot of things that people didn't like about Shiki. It was definitely a warming up for me. But once I got to know her, I actually started to like her quite a lot. It's just the eye patch thing, it really doesn't make sense for what I know of her character. But then the last one is Emu. Yeah, I pretty much thought that when I first met Emu in the game. Okay, I officially don't like you then. Fair. You suck, Imu. Wait, let me not judge, alright? I gotta have a stance. And right now, you on my list. There didn't seem to be a lot of redeeming qualities, and for a long time in the game, I just did not want to tolerate Imu. It was only from, I think, a coincidental gameplay moment where Imu put up a good fight trying to protect Miyabi and also realized her mistake with treating her sister so terribly that I started to like Imu. But again, it's like Yagi Murasaki right there. If you like Murasaki, there's a good chance you can hate Imu for that same reason. A lot of characters are probably linked in this case, the same way Miyabi is linked to taking out the other characters. So I definitely can't contest Imu's spot at being number 20. So overall, there were some surprises, but I can see the majority of how the characters were placed. Though, now that we've done that once more, I gotta bring up Yumi because now you see just the huge disparity between her and all the other characters. I feel like I'm unqualified. I'm pretty good about determining if I'm being biased or not and talking about things aside from my bias, which is why I'm trying to say I don't know if I can do that in this case. Because Yumi is one of my favorites in this game, competing with Homura. But I have very specific reasons on why I like Yumi, and it's like, okay, but is that the reason why she's number 1 out of all these other characters? Though considering number 2, I did not expect, and she had some pretty significant character flaws or moments that I thought, especially looking at some of the other characters, people would dislike. Maybe it's simply that Yumi was just solid all around. Even if I compare how Yumi ended up with Oscar in the end of the Hanzo route to how she ended up in her own route. In her own route, it seemed like the establishment of 2 good friends after Yumi had went on literally a huge character developing moment with her team. But in Asuka's route, I couldn't really begrudge how Yumi was acting. In fact, I was kind of cheering her on because I felt like Asuka had no reason, no place to try to judge Yumi's actions. Homura mentioned that Asuka's life she seemed kind of spoiled, and not that I want to say she's spoiled, but she hasn't gone through what Yumi or Homura or Miyabi have been through. They've been through some trials, tribulations, and until Asuka faces those and then overcomes them, I felt like she didn't have the right to say anything to Yumi in that position. But not to mention, Yumi's also been affected by characters like Hanzo, her whole team. If people don't like Katsuragi because of her unsolicited fan service moments, then I'm just saying, Hanzo, that could also be a part. Maybe that gave Yumi a lot of sympathy. Maybe that made people root for Yumi because of what Hanzo did. I'm just saying, just throwing things out. See, this is the problem, right? It's like Yumi being first only confirms all the biases that I have. And it's like, I can't really say that's objectiveness. Well, I can, but I can't, because, sure, I can claim what I like as a fact, but that's dangerous to be. I try to avoid that at all costs. So, we'll leave it at what I said in the first video. Though I will say, for me personally, Homura has a slight edge on Yumi right now because Homura has her sword. I don't know what Yumi's glow up form is like, and depending on what that can be, she might truly blow out. Her ranking for me might be similar to how she blows out the other characters. I don't know, and that's what I've been waiting to see that specifically since people told me they had forms in the crossover game, and it was Yumi's form in particular. They mentioned something about it. I won't say it now, but I really want to see it. So, with that being said, I could go on, but this video is definitely long enough. I think both videos for me, the recording time is like 40 plus minutes, which is like 2 minutes per character if you think about it. But nevertheless, those are just my thoughts on the character ranks. Please tell me what are yours, because I know it's gonna vary drastically between person to person. Obviously, we're not just all gonna agree with this listing. I mean, I'm assuming the way this is done, you choose who's your favorite character. So that means each character on this list, they are somebody's favorite character. At least that's how I would think. So please tell me what you think about this list down in the comments below. Feel free to rank all the characters if you like. I don't think I can do that fairly yet. We also still have some Shinobi, what are those called? Are they heart missions or quests? I don't think it's gonna change things too much, because I would mainly want to go off the story. And I'm assuming, again, that that's not something that everybody did. They might have only did it for their favorite character, because I could certainly see that as well. But nevertheless, please post your thoughts down in the comments below, and I will see you all in the next video.